Hi everybody, Paul Cameron here with Speed Up My Search, IT recruiting leader and job change mentor for senior IT professionals and IT executives. And in my last video, I was talking about how to use ChatGPT effectively and appropriately to add impact into your resume. And how I mentioned at the beginning of that video how that is going to be a game changer for job seekers, people looking for positions, and how they can really stand out amongst their peers. But I also briefly mentioned at the beginning of that how this is really going to become a complete nightmare for employers. If you're an employer, this is going to be important for you to prepare for and get ready and really understand the ramifications of what's coming your way. And I need to explain a little bit about both the power of opting in versus opting out and what a difference that's going to make, as well as the progression of what job seekers are doing to try to get in front of you, the employer, that maybe are not the most ethical of strategies that I would strongly discourage anybody from doing. First, to kind of set this up, is just the difference between having to opt in for something versus having to opt out of something, right? And there was a study in 2020, not too long ago, on something, a topic that is far more important than job search and resumes and things. This is a life and death type of scenario. This was done by, and I'll put the names on the screen here so that you can see them. I don't want to mispronounce them here, but there's 3 people who ran this study. And the study that they ran examines the impact on participation and by changing the default option from opting into something versus opting out of something. And they did this on organ donation rates in the United States, right? If you're going to become an organ donor. So they conducted this large-scale experiment partnering with DMVs across several states using those driver's license registration forms. And in some states, the default was set to where people had to check a box to opt in to become an organ donor. And then in some states, they had it to where you had to check a box to opt out of being an organ donor, meaning they were assuming that the individuals getting their licenses were willing to donate their organs unless they checked the box to decline. They ran this experiment across all these different states, and the results were that the organ donation rates in the opt-in states stayed about the same as what they were prior, which is the way that it was always done, that it was around 42% of people decided to opt in to be an organ donor. In the states where they had to opt out, the participation rate was 82%, right? Which means there was probably some people who maybe didn't want to be organ donors, but they would rather lose their organs after they pass than lose ink out of their pen, or check that box, right? So that's really important to keep in mind, that people are not going to go out of their way to do something, even if it's helpful for them or along those lines, right? So now let's think about the resume and how that's been progressing from the job seeker perspective, right? Again, dating myself, once upon a time, we used to print out our resumes on ivory colored stationery and mail it in. But then once we started sending it in on via email and electronically, I'm skipping past the fax stage. Yes, I was around for all of that. But once we started emailing the resumes in, people very quickly discovered that when recruiters were looking for somebody in their database, the big pile of Word docs on their hard drive, we would do a word search. And, you hit the Control F or whatever it was at that time, and you search for the word amongst those documents, and then it comes up. And so people who had that word that we were looking for on their resume, the most number of times came up towards the top of the list. And what people started to do, and was talked about at the different job clubs that I had gone to, was something called whitelining skills on your resume. If you're not familiar with this, basically what that is you've got a big white space on your resume someplace, probably at the end, and you put in a whole bunch of skills. You stuff all these skills in there and different keywords, and then you turn all the text white. And I never really understood why people do this, because even if you just do this in Word, for example, you put all this text, put a bunch of words into your Microsoft Word, turn all the text white, and then do a Control F, look for that word, find that word. It's going to highlight in yellow, or whatever color you've got it set to highlight in. And it's the same thing inside these applicant tracking systems. And I will show you, I'm going to have to blur a bunch of this. If you see a lot of blurred stuff on the screen, it's for confidential purposes here. I don't want to share people's names publicly on a YouTube video here. But if I did a search for something unusual, such as log4j, it's going to search through my entire database, 50,000, 60,000, however many records I've got in here. And I've got 626 people who have the term on their resume. And if I just click on the R here by this person's name, it's going to jump to the point on that person's resume where that word is. See that? It's in green right there. This is obviously, it's a PDF, or because it's highlighting everything as I click on that. But when I go to this one, well, there's my green highlight, but there's nothing there. Weird. So as the recruiter, I'm going to see that and say, I wonder what's going on there. And I'm going to realize, hey, look at all this stuff that I'm able to highlight that's not there. So then I'm just going to right click on this. I click on copy. I open up a notepad, just a blank notepad that pulls all the formatting out of the text, and I can paste it in there, and whoa, look at all these keywords. Now, if you were the recruiter or the employer, what do you think of that person? They were trying to sneak a whole bunch of keywords into their resume so that they would come up in a search. I would call them and maybe give them a job that they aren't qualified for. That's been going on ever since email started. And recruiters and hiring managers and employers feel the exact same way you probably do seeing that, which is, that's kind of slimy, right? That somebody would do that. And basically, I would call this person if I had to, if there was absolutely no one else, but I got 626 other people I can call who didn't do this, or hopefully they didn't do that, right? So now we fast forward a little bit to where it seems like that died down a lot. It's still going on, obviously, but there were a bunch of companies started to pop up that claimed to be ATS compatibility checkers, right? Really, they're just keyword matching sites where they're going to match how many keywords that are on the job description versus on your resume, right? You put in the job description on one side, and then you put your resume in, and it's going to see, hey, you're a 30% match to that particular job. Add these words into your resume to become a 70% match or an 80% match, right? And then they say this is your ATS compatible, right? And they go through all these different these different parameters, like, oh, you've got 653 words. You need to get rid of 3 words. And, oh, you've repeated the word developed 3 times. You need to remove that word twice on your resume. For the employers watching this, seriously, how many times have you ever looked at a candidate, they looked awesome for a position, and then you saw, oh, if only they wouldn't have repeated the word developed 2 extra times. Oh, man. Disqualified. Oh, they got 653 words, not 649 words. They're out, right? Never, never. So seriously, if you're on one of those sites and it's giving you a B- because you've repeated a word, or seriously, they are selling you a bill of goods. So just be aware of that. And matching keywords is not an ATS compatibility tool. Checking ATS compatibility means, will your formatting be accepted into the applicant tracking system, or will it be rejected completely because it can't read the information on your resume? right? Those are two totally separate categories. But I digress. This whole video is kind of hot buttons here for me. But people would start using these things. They would check, and then they'd put those keywords on there. They would manually go to their resume, add those words onto their resume so that it would be an 80% match, and then they would apply. Right? So they would essentially have to opt into adding words and skills to their resume that they did not have experience with. Right? Now, you know, some people would do it the right way. They would only put skills that they actually had on the resume. But there's a whole lot of people who would add skills to their resume and degrees and titles and experiences to their resume that they didn't have. And they would manually type that in. They would opt in knowing they were doing something deceitful onto their resume. Which brings us to where we are now. With ChatGPT, now they have to opt out. It's going to put things into their resume that they will then have to say, I don't really have that. It's fine. And they leave it there. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. And I'm going to use some exact prompts that I see. And the reason I'm making these videos and getting back into making videos here again is because like the top 10 videos that I'm seeing on how to use ChatGPT to build a resume are telling people to do things that just are going to create major problems for both the people who take the advice as well as for the employers, and on a drastic, almost catastrophic scale for some of these companies. And I'm not overstating that. You know, follow me all the way through here and I'll explain what I mean. I'll show you some other tools that will really illustrate how dangerous that this can be. But here are some actual prompts that are being recommended, and I am not recommending you do any of these. These I do not recommend. I'm putting it on the screen here. Not recommended. Please don't take this advice. But if you look up other videos on YouTube, you're going to see that this is what they're saying you should do. So one is write a resume with metrics based on these job responsibilities. And you paste the job description right there. Analyze this job description and identify the most important skills for this position. Write 3 to 4 achievement-based bullet points around these skills. And they paste the required skills right there. The following are a list of responsibilities for, fill in the job title that I'm applying for, insert responsibilities. Based off the list of responsibilities, can you tailor the resume to the responsibilities? It was a much longer prompt that I shortened there. One of my all-time favorites, the guy had the whole resume written, and then it says, he writes in there, can you make me sound more interesting and use fancier words? Really? Come on. And I'll tell you what, because these are actual prompts, and it may get back to the people, these video creators that put this stuff out there, that I did this. If you are one of those people watching it and you put those videos out and are recommending people put these prompts into ChatGPT to create their resume, I invite you to please reach out to me. I'll make a video with you so we can talk about why this is going to be so damaging to both the people who are going to be using this, the people who take your advice, and even more damaging to the employers who could potentially hire these people who don't have the skills. And I'll show you here, it doesn't seem like this is overly dangerous so far, but let me get into the next one. This is from another YouTube creator here, and again, same invitation to him as well. Reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to any of you and explain why this is really something that you need to think about before you start giving people advice, hoping they're going to click on your videos. All right, this guy writes, draft a work experience section for a resume of a digital transformation manager. All right, that's kind of in my wheelhouse as a tech recruiter for senior digital transformation managers, right? And here's what they're getting in response. All right, here's some prompts I took straight off the screen. Implemented a cloud-based collaboration platform to improve team communication, productivity, resulting in a 40% increase in project completion rates. Developed and delivered training programs for employees on new technologies and digital tools, resulting in a 90% adoption rate. developed and executed comprehensive digital strategies to enhance the company's online presence and increase customer engagement, resulting in a 30% increase in website traffic and a 25% increase in online sales. Now, if I need somebody, I'm searching for somebody who has experience implementing a cloud-based collaboration platform so that we can get our team working together better. I'm probably going to call that person because, wow, looks like that person's done that. I mean, just at glance level here, for no matter how seasoned you are, that looks really good. This guy goes on. He puts that same prompt in there of draft a work experience section for a digital transformation manager. He says, but add on to this, within the retail banking industry with experience in RPA, mobile, and agile transformation. And then it gets back things such as, spearheaded the development and execution of the bank's digital strategy, resulting in a 25% increase in mobile app usage and a 30% increase in online banking transactions. Again, this is stuff that ChatGPT made up. This person doesn't have this experience. They did not do these things. And if they just put that on their resume, that is going to be a major disservice, right? And for everybody starting to think to themselves, oh yeah, well, so what? You get it to that seasoned HR person or recruiter or HR manager or hiring manager, they're going to be able to figure it out. All's right in the world, and that person's made a connection at that company. Okay, here's where we go with this. This is why this is so dangerous. You're taking hours of time. If lots of people start doing this, you're taking hours of time away from those recruiters and HR teams that are spending time on the phone talking to you or talking to the people who are putting these resumes together, and not talking to the people who they should be talking to, the people who are qualified but can't seem to get a response from the company because we're spending all our time talking to these people who aren't qualified. Right? You're taking opportunities away from the people who should be getting those opportunities and losing hours of time from that perspective. If it goes through to a screener who's, maybe a summer intern or somebody who's only been doing this for a few years, and they can't figure out that this is, a bunch of baloney, and then they pass it on to the hiring manager. Now the hiring managers and the team are taking away time from doing their jobs to speak to people who are completely unqualified for these positions to potentially hire them for the role. Now, again, they should be able to tell whether the person actually has the experience or not, or maybe testing them on this, on the material itself. But watch this. I'm going to take this to a whole other level on you. All right. Now, and I'm doing this on my own, but I am positive that there are other people out there that are going to be doing similar things down the line, and you could potentially do this yourself if you're a job seeker. So anybody who's worked with me knows that I've been using a personality AI technology for, like I say, for many years, where you can go to somebody's profile on LinkedIn and it will figure out what their DISC personality profile is, right? And there's lots of tools like that. I happen to use one called Crystal Knows. It's a good one. There's a bunch of them out there, and I've run hundreds and hundreds of reports for members of my job search mastery programs here. And the reason that I do this is because when I'm coaching people through, interview strategies, we talk about the differences between the golden rule and the platinum rule, right? If you're not familiar, everybody knows the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But the platinum rule is so much more effective when it comes to building rapport quickly and making friends and networking. The platinum rule says, instead of do unto others the way you would have them do unto you, instead do unto others the way that they would want you to do unto them, right? If you're looking at the DISC personality model, the different quadrants of personality types, there's 16 different types. And if you are in that analyst kind of personality type, right, you're somebody who will really sit back and go through all the information and make decisions based on the information that's there, not on the emotions surrounding it, not on the hype that's around it. You're going to make an informed, fully digested, decision based on all the facts, versus somebody who's maybe in that D category, which is pretty typical for your CIOs and VPs and CEOs, right? The senior leadership, they're more in that captain or driver type personalities where they're making quick decisions. They want the bottom line on top. They're going with gut feel in a lot of scenarios, right? Because they've got the experience to make those decisions quickly. Well, if you treat them the way that they want, or the way that you want to be treated, and you give them all the detailed list of information, they're going to be asleep halfway through the interview and walk out and say, this guy, nope, right? And that's not going to help you. Whereas if you can speak their language and speak the way that they prefer to speak with others and the way they like to receive information, you're going to have a much higher success rate in building rapport with them and speaking in a way that resonates with them. Does that make sense? Right? So what I've done with the different personality tools and things that are out there is I take all the information about their traits and translate into how that can be helpful for somebody who would be interviewing with them, right? So here's a form that I've got within my site. First off, we'll put in the title of the role, data architect. Say they need AWS, Azure, and GCP. Put in their information and their name here, the CIO, and then select the disk type. Let's say that this one is a skeptic. All right, so now it goes through, Joe is a detail-oriented problem solver, values logic and efficiency in decision-making. Goes through a lot of detail, and here's, just some insights. Here's, what comes naturally to Joe. It comes from the personality tools. They make decisions from logic and data, not emotion. And what to do about it? Answer with logical reasoning and data in your responses. Review, this person comes naturally to them to review all the facts from processing situations. So showcase your thoroughness and attention to detail. Speaking of Joe, they like to remain logical and objective. Keep your responses fact-based, not emotional. Just gives her do's and don'ts and common attributes, words that would be accurate in describing them. But now let me blow your mind a little bit here. So I've got hundreds of these reports that I've now embedded into this tool. I'm going to take this quick prompt that I've built specifically for this chatbot that I've put together. This is a ChatGPT bot, and it starts feeding back to me. Here are some specific questions that this particular person might ask you in their interview based on their role, this position title, the skills required, and this person's personality type. So here's some very specific questions you can start preparing for so you know how to answer them in a way that's going to be effective. And then it goes on to start explaining how you can structure your answers in such a way that it's going to resonate with them. It's going to be tailored to that person's specific communication style and how they like to hear things, right? So when candidates start putting together resumes with information and skills that they don't necessarily have, and they get calls from recruiters and the hiring manager, they get called in for an interview and they prepare how to respond in very specific ways to make you like them. Now, we're potentially going to be hiring people for jobs that they're not necessarily qualified to do, right? And now we're going way beyond just wasting time for some of the recruiters and hiring managers and HR teams. Now we're talking about making bad hires, right? And they say that the cost of a bad hire, they estimate as much as 15 times that person's annual compensation. And that's just for entry level and mid-level people. We're not talking about senior executives here. That is borderline catastrophic for some companies if they lose that much money for making one bad hire after the next. Now, this is very good news for agency recruiters out there like me who've been doing this for a long time and know how to read through a lot of this stuff, so we can make sure we're still making good hires. But this is something employers need to be aware of as this technology becomes more and more popular. Now, there are already lots of detection tools out there, right? So if you get a resume and it looks a little too good to be true, you can start putting the content In fact, I'll take this so you can see what I'm talking about here. There, and this says it is 96% robot-like content in here, so it's picking it up. Now, my applicant tracking systems don't have any AI detection software in them, neither one of them yet. I'm sure that's coming, but just not here yet. But there's tons of these tools that are out there. If you go to futuretools.io, there are 1,602 different tools, and AI detection is a category just in and of its own. It says 23 of the 1,600 tools are AI detectors. If you really go through these in detail, you're going to see that 13 of them are really what you're looking for in terms of determining whether text is AI or not. But the point is, you can use one of these tools to figure out whether the person wrote this or if it was not. And then on top of that, there are also applications that will reword the AI text to make it sound human, and then you put it back into one of these AI detection tools and it can't tell. So, we're chasing our tails here, but, I'm sure there'll be a solution at some point. The bigger point is making sure humans get involved in the process, the hiring process, to be able to figure out whether the person knows what they're talking about or not. So I would welcome any employers who are watching this and want to know more about it. This is an ever-evolving situation here. I would love to know what tools you're using to help determine whether the content you're getting is written by robots or by the actual people, how you're going to go about changing your hiring process to ensure you're making the best hire possible. And I'm happy to share my thoughts and strategies with you as well. Please reach out to me. Let's start a collaboration, almost a mastermind group of, hey, let's, how do we get ahead of this? Because this is going to be a big deal coming up soon. So I hope to hear from lots of you on your thoughts and ideas on this. And in the meantime, I'm going to do my best to come up with as many videos as I can and ideas and strategies to help both job seekers and employers to use this AI technology ethically and to your advantage to help save everybody lots of time in getting where they need to be, for both sides to look at this and say, hey, this is going to speed up my search. Pun fully intended there. All right. So that's all I got for this one. It's time to get to work.